Ambassador, great to have you here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said today that Ukraine must make some, quote, difficult decisions and sacrifices to end the war. He then said Russia will have to make concessions as well, but didn't say what those might be. Is this a negotiated peace for Ukraine or a negotiated surrender?
Well, I think it's working out to be a negotiated surrender. Look, Trump has flipped the American position 180 degrees from supporting Ukraine in its fight against this unprovoked aggression from Russia to being Russia's advocate, saying even before the negotiations have begun that Ukraine's going to have to give up territory, that Ukraine won't be allowed to join NATO, that NATO won't be allowed to give security guarantees, that the U.S. won't give security guarantees, puppeting Russian propaganda about Zelensky having a 4% approval rating in Ukraine. I mean, the switch is just about as clear as you can get, and it obviously bodes very poorly for Ukraine.
Yeah, well, Zelensky's approval rating apparently is up after that Oval Office blow-up, so that only helped him, at least domestically, in politics. Is it possible that behind the scenes, Trump and Marco Rubio are insisting on sanctions from Putin?
I don't think so, notwithstanding Trump has said that publicly. It's a completely hollow threat. The latest statistics, 2024, indicate that the U.S. imported about $3 billion worth of goods and services from Russia in 2024, $3 billion. Total American imports last year were $4.1 trillion. So you can tariff Russia all you want. It has no impact on America's trade. And Russia has successfully evaded the U.S. and EU sanctions, particularly on oil sales, ever since they were imposed. I think nobody knew that Trump threat was hollow better than Vladimir Putin did.
Something that Marco Rubio said jumped out at me today. He said that Ukraine will have to make hard decisions in order to end this conflict or pause it in some way. Pause it? What does that mean?
Well, you could have a ceasefire. That would be a pause while they negotiate. I don't think Ukraine ought to agree to a ceasefire. I think that works against them. If you freeze the existing battle lines, you're confirming, or you risk confirming, that Russia has indeed more than doubled the amount of territory in Ukraine that it holds since it began this war. And these ceasefire lines have an uncomfortable way of becoming permanent borders. If I were the Ukrainians, I would not agree to a ceasefire. Now, it depends on whether the Europeans can continue to supply them with the military and other assistance they need. That's very questionable at this point.
You've called it despicable that the United States, at Trump's orders, stopped sharing intelligence with Ukraine. The Trump administration says it only paused offensive intelligence, not defensive intelligence. So are Ukrainians still able to see the hundreds of bombs and missiles that Russia is launching its way?
Well, I have no idea in an ongoing war situation you can say what's offensive and what's defensive intelligence. Knowing the disposition of your enemy for whether your purposes are offensive or defensive is critical. I think this is just a way of trying to silence some of the criticism. Look, the basic problem here is that Trump has taken Russia's side. He said in the State of the Union message the war was senseless. Well, in fact, Ukrainians disagree with that fundamentally. They think they're fighting for their freedom and independence. You know, the Americans once fought for our freedom and independence. Was that senseless? Just because for parts of the war we were losing to the United Kingdom, was that senseless? Was it senseless for Patrick Henry to say, give me liberty or give me death? I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all.
There was an ominous tweet from Elon Musk that the entire Ukrainian army would collapse if I shut down Starlink. He later said he wouldn't do it. But while he muses publicly about it, he is also publicly accusing people in Ukraine of today launching a cyber attack on X.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem here is not Elon Musk's opinion, which is one man's opinion along with 330 million other Americans. It's whether he is in effect an official of the United States government. His status remains unclear. You would think people in Congress would be concerned about it, given the potential for conflict of interest that exists with so many of Musk's assets tied up in China, where they produce Teslas in Chinese-owned facilities.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.